We are all here today because we are morally outraged by the death and destruction visited upon the people of Darfur. The scope of the violence is so vast that we don't even know how many people have died, and right now there's a controversy about which statistics are most accurate. What we do know is that hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives, and several million more have been forced from their homes.
400,000 deaths in the Darfur genocide. It's a number that almost defies comprehension. For someone like me, 53 years old, it represents one life tragically cut short for each and every waking and sleeping hour that I've been alive.
The Janjaweed rode in, people say. They were yelling ethnic slogans. They raped and branded women in front of their husbands. They killed children, they killed men in front of their whole families. As chilling as each individual story is, what's most chilling is how similar they all seem.
Please join me in welcoming our first speaker. She is a Sudan country specialist for Amnesty International, Denise Bell.
This conflict began in 2003. Since then, 2.5 million Darfuris have been displaced, 240 of those thousand into eastern Chad, where 170,000 Chadians have also been displaced. 2 million more Darfuris rely on some form of humanitarian assistance. That is 2/3 of the population of Darfur that has been affected by this conflict. United Nations passed a resolution 1769 at the end of July, calling for a 26,000 strong peacekeeping force in conjunction with the African Union to be on the ground by the end of this year. And it's there to protect the civilians, the people of Darfur. What Amnesty focuses on is the need to hold the UN and the US to its word, to get the troops on the ground as quickly as possible. Violence is spiraling out of control. There's banditry and anarchy. Rebels are fighting amongst themselves. There's violence within the camps for refugees and internally displaced people. But we must get some sort of security on the ground, and that's what the United Nations can help assure.
Our next speaker is the Executive Director of the Africa Division at Human Rights Watch. Please welcome Peter Takirambude.
The UN has finally, after sleeping through the crisis of Darfur, which has been ongoing the last 4 to 5 years, the UN has virtually slept through that period, but finally there appear to be a bit of awakening when the UN Security Council passed Resolution 1769. The reason why the suffering, the looting, the mass murder, the climate of fear that has engulfed Darfur, the reason why that has been going on has been due to the lack of international action, international response, consequential international action. The price for inaction has been relatively low. It's been very cheap. Politicians and UN bureaucrats have been able to get away with literally murder, not responding to the situation in Darfur. But thanks to your commitment, thanks to your activism, the price of inaction is getting high. It's becoming more and more expensive for them to remain. So please, the appeal to you all is to continue the pressure. Without the pressure, the price will be too low and there will be no resolution in Darfur.
Peter is absolutely right. This must be a global effort. You'll see throughout the crowd we have flags from different countries around the world. Each flag represents a country where somebody has signed a global petition that we will be launching today. Our next speaker is the director of the Crimes Against Humanity program at Human Rights First. Please welcome Betsy Apple.
Each person in their family they have lost represents an entire world. So when we talk about the numbers, let's remember the numbers are important but it's the individuals behind the numbers who matter, and that's why we're here today. Peace is not peace without justice. Peace and justice are indispensable partners, and one without the other is a perversion of both. Not only do we need to demand peace processes that bring all of the parties to the table, but we need to demand accountability. We need to hold the perpetrators accountable, and we need not to sell accountability short because we think it's the quick road to peace. In order for us to keep moving forward, we need to keep sustained pressure on all of the actors. We need to keep the pressure up on the U.S. We need to keep the pressure up on China. We need to keep the pressure up on Khartoum. And I ask you to join a Human Rights First campaign. Stand in for a victim or survivor of Darfur. Go to the Human Rights First website and stand in and make sure that you continue to do whatever you can to keep up the pressure so that we can indeed achieve a just and sustainable peace in Darfur and in Sudan. Thank you.
Of all the video messages that we received, perhaps the most commonly repeated phrase is "never again." Reflecting on the crisis in Darfur, people invoke a historical narrative about our experience with genocide in the 20th century. And in these video messages, people demand that this phrase not be a hollow slogan, but rather a global commitment that informs the choices we make today. The next speaker is a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. Please join me in welcoming Eugenie Mukashimana.
Sometimes when we talk of a genocide, we think it is something that is happening over there. It's almost like a horror movie that we're watching. And it's almost not real to us because we cannot comprehend what is happening to the people who are experiencing the atrocities that we see or hear about. People said that they didn't know what was happening in Rwanda, and that is why people were slaughtered and no one was there to help them. I did my own research and found out that everybody knew, even before it happened, except me, who had to experience it. A genocide is real, and there are lives that are being lost, and they shouldn't be cut short because none of us has to determine whose life is supposed to be how long. We all end up in this world and we don't have any choice. And we should be allowed to live on this world to our full potential. It is encouraging to be here because many of you are young, and this is what is really giving me some relief that you are taking the situation in your own hands. You are working for your own future and your own survival. If we don't stop these kind of evils and allow them to continue the way they do, there is no future for us or the future generation. It doesn't have to be that there's something in for you. You're acting just because you're a human being who is concerned about somebody's life, just the same way your life matters. Those kids in Darfur's life matters. The whole Darfur campaign was started by students who were concerned that grown-ups and people who are sitting in Washington and some other places and in the UN down here did not seem to care enough to take action. So I'm pleased that this generation is using what is available to us to do more good and really to look beyond our own personal needs so that we can have a better future. Thank you very much.
We stand with people from around the world calling for a just peace in Darfur.
We stand with people from around the world calling for a just peace in Darfur.
Got it?
Our next speaker stood where I am right now he turned his back on the UN headquarters and he walked to Washington, D.C. By the time he arrived, Congress had passed the Darfur Peace and Accountability Act. Please welcome human rights activist Simon Deng.
Your actions and your presence speak so loudly, telling the world that you are not bystander the way the United Nations is all about. Your presence today and your actions speak so loudly and so clear that you are taking the lead and becoming the voice for those who have no voice. If there is any solution to the problem in Sudan and in the regions of Darfur in particular being found today, you are the backbones of that struggle. I was kidnapped by an Arab and taken to the northern Sudan and was enslaved for 3.5 years. Today, I'm not an enslaved any longer. I'm a free man standing among the free peoples in the free world, in which we know for sure that freedom is a God-given right to every single human being. Displaced 7 million Southern Sudanese as the biggest and the largest refugees since World War II, and the United Nations, shame on it, never said anything about it. The government of Khartoum promised you how many times since 2003 they have been promising to the United Nations, but there was no action. It is time, my fellow human beings, if the UN is genuine in his promise, reading today that there is peace coming. Every single day passed by, somebody being slaughtered and somebody being murdered. It is time for us to say to the United Nations, either to put up in your own word or to shut up. To bring justice in Darfur, there have to be accountability, peace and accountability. If there is no accountability, there is no peace, because we're dealing with the government of Sudan, which always make peace in the papers and don't honor it. What you did today, you will look back tomorrow and you say to yourself, thank God I was part of the solutions. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you very much.
He's the co-chair of the Save Darfur Coalition, and he's the executive director of the Jewish Council on Public Affairs. Please welcome Steve Guteau.
In the days ahead, great decisions that affect the world are going to be made here. And we today insist that an end to the suffering in Darfur be one of them. God demands much more of us. God demands that this end. A peace process must be put in place, one with teeth, one that includes United Nations and African Union forces on the ground. The parties must sit together and they must reach an agreement. Khartoum and President al-Bashir sound like, for a moment at least, they sound like they're moving forward. They have agreed to allow a peacekeeping force on the ground in Darfur. They are agreeing, at least at the moment, to meet with key parties and to discuss how to end this atrocity. In the past, Khartoum has often stepped up to the plate, but then, as we all know, they find a way to retreat into more genocide. It's difficult to trust them. We have all seen the United Nations enter the fray, and then they too retreat. Here at the home of the United Nations, we demand with loud voices there be no more retreat and no more genocide. Say it so they hear you. No more retreat. No more genocides. France, Germany, Great Britain, other nations of the world are making it clear that this must not go on. They must do more than make it clear. They must do what is required politically, economically, Economically, we're working on that, and on the ground, they must stop this moral and physical debacle. We say to the civilized world, no more retreats, no more genocide.
And one of the most consistent themes in the video messages we've received is a sense of our shared responsibility and a global commitment to stand up now for the people of Darfur.
I think that there must be people in every other country around the world thinking the same thing that I am.
My name is Gary Wesson and I'm speaking from Jerusalem. I'm British from Westfields.
My name is Jessica Tabassani, and I'm a 16-year-old student living in Melbourne, Australia.
One of the most powerful ways to demonstrate our sense of global commitment is the Olympic Torch Relay that the Dream for Darfur organization is organizing around the world. Our next guest is the executive director of Dream for Darfur. Please welcome Jill Sabat.
We such hope to see all of you here today. We're in need of hope. I was in eastern Chad last month for 10 days and toured refugee camps and camps for internally displaced people, and was shocked by what I saw. I really felt like I had traveled to another planet. We have a UN resolution that allows a peace support operation to go into Darfur. It's been approved. We have that. Now is the time to keep pushing. And it's the time to keep pushing, I think, because we have one of the most powerful players that can make a difference in this crisis in a bit of a tough spot. And that is the country China. China has unrivaled influence over the regime in Khartoum. China has immense energy needs, and they give Khartoum roughly $1 billion a year in revenue to buy oil. That money is used in part to buy bombs, to buy airplanes, and to fund the Janjaweed militia, the killers that come in on camels and burn down the villages. This is a very good deal for China because Khartoum then takes some of that money, turns around, and gives it back to China and buys guns and arms and weapons. And so China is underwriting and profiting from the genocide in Darfur. Anything that the international community tried to do to alleviate the suffering, to get troops in, to start up a peace process, sanctions, all of it, China would either block it, they'd dilute it, they'd water it down, they prevented it from happening for 4 long years. You cannot be underwriting a genocide while you are the host of the Olympics. If you look at our international institutions today, the Olympics are one of the only ones left that represent peace and cooperation and brotherhood and that really work. So these are our Olympics too, and we need to take the spotlight that's going to shine on the Olympics, that's about peace and cooperation, and move that light to the forgotten people of Darfur. An Olympic torch relay from Darfur to Beijing. And we started it already. This torch is going to travel through countries that have experienced genocide, and it is going to link those survivor communities, the survivors from Rwanda, from Armenia, from Bosnia, from Germany, from Auschwitz, Cambodia, and link those survivor communities to make a never again movement that all of you are a part of, to make it real for Darfur and to end genocide for all time. These Olympics belong to the planet, they represent peace, and we will not tolerate a genocide going on while the games are going on.
Please welcome Matthew Kennis from Amnesty International.
There's a famous quote by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who escaped from Europe in the late 1930s. Much of his family was killed in the Holocaust. And the quote goes something like this: "Not all are guilty, but everyone is responsible." Today, on this Global Day for Darfur, September 16th, you here at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza in front of the United Nations are but one of dozens of actions, rallies, protests throughout the world, calling for peace, calling for security, calling for an end to the violence, calling for an end to the rapes, calling for an end to the torched homes, calling for an end
for the government of Sudan to arm the Janjaweed militia. Amnesty International, with human rights organizations all throughout the world, are calling for UN boots on the ground. But they're not there yet. Until they're on the ground, until they're protecting people, until the rapes and the killings and the torched homes are stopped, we cannot be silent. We must continue. We must be loud. We must mobilize. End the violence in Darfur. Protect the people now. End the violence in Darfur. Protect the people now.
Please welcome the Secretary General of the Darfur People's Association, Rahama Dafala.
And in this crisis, I lost 48 people from my entire family, including a 3-year-old child and a 93-year-old man. I'm from Darfur, I raised in Darfur, and when my village was very hard to me to stay there, just I find I've been forced to escape to come to stay here in the United States with you. Today you've been here to defend because they cannot defend themselves. They don't have a weapon to fight for themselves. Sudan government have warplanes and bombs and heavy guns to kill and destroy whatever they want to do. It's very hard to recognize where my village is located because everything was wiped out completely destroyed. It's just like plain ground, nothing left, no huts, even the trees were buried completely from bombarding. The Janjaweed are operating up to now. I saw by myself 3 weeks ago, and government of Sudan is freely bombing, and United Nations here behind us, paralyzed by Sudan government. They cannot do nothing to protect the people. Just they keep adopting resolutions and nothing being implemented up to now. Those people, they cannot defend themselves, but I'm very proud of you here to speak for them, to fight for them, because I believe humanity is one family. And we're all human beings. It's not matter of the color, it's not matter of the religion, it's not matter of the region, it matters of the humanity, and we're all one family. And thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank you again.
Our next speaker just spent the last year in Chad as the sole medical doctor at a refugee camp of 27,000 people. Please welcome Dr. Ashish Brahma.
I bring to you greetings from Urukasoni camp. And as some people have said before, it's too bad I have to bring greetings from a refugee camp. And I want you all to think about that refugee camp. And for once, not in a way that these are sad people, but they're very positive people. I want to tell you the story about Zara. She has hope. She has a longing for peace. She has all the dignity, and she's shown resilience. And that's the take-home message from me to you. Greetings of the camp Urukasoni, the Zagawa people who were chased. If they have it in them to believe in the future, then all of us here should. I'm very happy you're here, and I hope that everybody who dares to care in his own way, in her own way, can do something. And you know how to do that. It's not difficult. And it starts by showing up and speaking from your heart. So thank you for being here. That's all I have to say.
Our next speaker is the Executive Director of the Darfur Rehabilitation Project. Please welcome Blanche Foster.
And we have watched this same event happen over and over and over again in world's history. And at this point, many of us are not going to be here much longer, and our grandchildren will not know what happened during our lifetime because the word wasn't passed on. Shall we go on and on and on, or shall we stop this now? Darfur Rehabilitation Project was started by Darfurians who are in the area. I am not a Darfurian, but I encourage you to dare to care. I'm imploring all of us not to look for ways to get out of the conversation, but engage in the conversation. I encourage you to be proactive. I encourage you to realize that we have a global economy. We are connected. We can do something about it. There is no reason for us to be overpowered. Do all that we possibly can to help people who cannot help themselves. They are totally dependent upon the world body to help them to survive, to get together and join all of us and recognize the fact that the world body is you and me.
In the videos you're about to see now, people demand, after 4 years of hand-wringing and empty rhetoric, people tell their leaders that they will be measured not by their words, but by their actions.
Amazed that something hasn't been done so far, because the things that are going on over there in Darfur are just completely outrageous.
And we know what we need to do. Stop making excuses. You just kind of pause and wait till more people ask you for help. Realize that there are so many others that are in Africa right now that cannot ask you for help, and they need it.
I'm calling the leaders of today's world to help bring security, peace, and justice to those in the region.
So we are proud to be sponsoring today a global petition with a group called Avaz.org. Avaz is a word that means voice or song in Hindi, Farsi, Urdu, and half a dozen other languages. And Avaz.org is the world's largest global online activist community. In the last year, they have over 1.3 million members in 180 countries around the world. Their website is in 12 different languages, and we are so proud to be working with them to sponsor this global petition. Please join me in welcoming the Executive Director of Avaz.org, Rikin Patel.
I think for me, what kind of connects me to this community is a couple of principles that I feel are just really revolutionary. And one is just that we're all human beings first and citizens of our country second. And another is that I've heard kind of throughout different speeches is just the idea that what affects one of us in one place affects all of us everywhere, that an injustice somewhere is an injustice everywhere. It's a truly global movement. This is all over the place. The petition that Benji mentioned, we just launched it a few days ago. We've had tens of thousands of people from every country in the world sign it. And it's a truly global movement. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about this is that Darfurians are really part of this, and Sudanese people are part of this, and Africans are part of this. And it's not really savior activism, it's solidarity activism. We're sort of standing in solidarity, arm in arm with people that we want to work with. What does it mean exactly to stand in solidarity with the people of Darfur? What if it hadn't been Osama bin Laden that had attacked the World Trade Center in 2001? What if it had been the Sudanese government? What would have been the response of the international community if that had happened? If 2,000 American citizens had been killed, rather than 200,000 Sudanese citizens? And then think about the position that the international community did take at the peace talks for Darfur that occurred in 2005, 2006, where the peace agreement that the international community supported let 3 men who had perpetrated this mass murder of 200,000 civilians. They left these 3 men who head the Sudanese government with complete power over the army, the Air Force, the police, the national government, the governments of Darfur. It's a perverse moral logic where that's called peace. It's something we would never accept. It's a betrayal of the people of Darfur. And it's the second great crime of Darfur, I feel like. The first crime was genocide. And the second crime is the betrayal of the victims of that genocide at the peace table by the international community. What this whole movement is about is never again. And a peace without justice is a prescription for again and again and again. And next week, we're standing with the people of Darfur. And we're not going to, and to say to them, to say to Rahama, to his family, to everybody here, we're not gonna betray you. We're not gonna sell you out. We're gonna stand with you, and we're gonna demand the peace with justice that this terrible crime calls on us to work for. The truth is, we let them be murdered. We let it happen. But we're gonna stop it now. And we're not gonna let their hope be murdered at the peace table. We're not gonna let that second great crime happen. I'd just like to say thanks to everybody. It's an amazing group, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful day, and all the organizers. And I'm so excited for us to really stand with the people of Darfur and make sure that the first crime and the second crime and no more crimes happen in Darfur, that we're gonna stand up and we're gonna stop it here and now, this week.
As we stand here right now, this very moment, millions of people in Darfur are struggling to survive. And many people doubt that our presence here today will have any impact at all on their lives. The only response that we have to that cynicism is a deep sense of our common humanity and a conviction that if we come together now as a global community, our voices are powerful enough to end a genocide.